Hi, everybody. I'm going live just randomly. I'm still laying down on my bed, having some random thoughts about what's going on in our country. But let me talk to you all about myself. In 2005, I bought a house in the south of Texas and decided to move back home to my roots. I had been living in Galveston County for over 20 years. I was married for 14 of those 20 years, and my in laws, whom I loved, always would come to me when their son would cause trouble. Even though they knew I was divorced, it was like they still relied on me to control that person. And it had gotten to the point where, I wasn't living my life. I couldn't live my life. So my daughter was already in college. And she stayed in Galveston County because of her grandparents and her college. And I decided that it was time for me to move away from the area, or else I would never be able to live my own life. So I moved away and I moved back. I left my 15 plus year job with Sears and took my 401k out. Good morning. I got a kick in the ass. That was the first time that I got a kick in the ass for getting my 401k. But with that money, because I had friends that I worked with, my life has always revolved about working around men. Well, one of the guys that I worked with worked part time at Sears, but he was a CPA. And I will never, ever forget Clay West. Clay West was somebody that taught me how to invest. And I will never forget that he told me, Angela, you're still young and you need to learn how to invest your money. Sears does not hire people off the turnip cart to invest your money. You're still young and you're going to invest in the long term investments. You're not going to invest short term, Angela. So you need to figure out what you're going to do with your money when you invest it. And I told him, Clay, I don't know how to do that, but teach me. We don't have nothing to do except for profile customers here. And believe you me, I would profile customers at Sears. Somebody was in there with a three-piece suit and brand new shoes, they better not be wasting their time trying to talk to me. Why? Because I was there to sell the product and keep the product sold. I wasn't there just to entertain them while their wives were shopping in the mall. My job was around hardware. I sold hardware. I sold lawn and garden. I sold sporting goods, paint, water heaters, and I kept that stuff sold for Sears. Why? Because Sears would train me. When I worked for Sears, employees were empowered to listen to that customer and keep the product sold. And that's what a lot of people don't understand nowadays. It's like, really? I made $2 an hour from Sears, but I never made minimum wage. And I had a lot of return customers, to the tune of $2 or $3 million a year. So that was something that my ex-husband could not tolerate. And that was something that I had to get away from because of my ex husband. I made my rules, and he was not allowed to come into the store at all. My job was to talk to him in while I was in that store, and he better not cause trouble. And he did cause trouble one time, and I was at a register, and he was cussing me out at a register at Sears. And I had a lady customer in front of me that I was taking care of, and a manager next to me, keeping quiet and listening to him while he was there cussing me out about my $2 an hour job. I thanked the lady and I told her, "Ma'am, I apologize for what's going on in front of you, and I would like for you to come back to see us at a later date." But I finished selling her what I was going to sell her, and she left the store. And that's when the manager, who was a very good friend of mine, turned around to him and told him, "Don't ever do this to Angela again. If you do, as soon as you walk in the door, security will escort you out." And being the man that he was, the very next day, I had this big old, you know, thing of roses come into the store. He would always say that he was sorry, but it was always psychological and a bunch of bull. But he was used to that. He was used to doing that to his parents, and I had lived with that for 14 years, and plus I was already divorced and still living through it. So I know that I'm ignoring the comments. Hi, Punky. But there's a reason why I'm doing this. This is not a political advertisement about who I am going to vote for. But when you send me a message about the ACT bill that some person signed in 2018 for the Bureau of Prisons, I'm going to be here to tell you that person was just lining up stuff for when he was going to be put in jail so he could take time off of his sentence and get out. Other than that bill, he didn't do nothing for the south of Texas. Back to my story about how you need to watch these people closely and watch the people that are closer to you, even closer than what you're watching people from other states. After I got out of Sears, I came to Raymondville, and I worked for a doctor who no longer is here in Willacy County. I don't even know if he still has an office or not, but it was called Impact Therapy. And I worked for him for like 10 months only. Because after I worked for him for 10 months, I got a job in one of the prisons here, paying me $2 more an hour than what I was making at the office, at the doctor's office, answering his phones and making appointments for patients, which I still think is a bunch of bull. It's just a way of taking money from the Medicare, Medicaid system, from the insurances and all that. But don't make the mistake of thinking that because I didn't go to college, I didn't live through a bunch of political bullshit in these jobs. I'm still living it. From there, I went to work for Willacy County Detention Center, which was a private contract that MTC had for Homeland Security here in Willacy County. We had 10 tents that could hold up to 2,000 people. And then they made a brick building that could hold another 1,200 people. So we had, at any given time after that brick building was made, about 3,500 people there. MTC had a contract. Why am I talking about it on social media? Because it's been a long time I can talk about it. They're full of crap. They made a contract with the government and they changed one word on our badge. And they were getting away with underpaying employees here in Texas because of one word that they had changed on our badges. Our badges said security officers, but we were doing correctional officers' jobs by carrying guns when these people had to go to hospitals and stuff. And we were doing correctional officers' jobs when we were dealing with criminals that were criminals, not just illegals here in the United States. So we had been working there a few years, and 5 or 6 of us got together and we went to the labor board. And we took MTC to the labor board, and they lost a big settlement, a multi-million-dollar settlement, because they owed all their employees back pay money. Because their contract was made with the government for correctional officers, not security officers. And they were making us do correctional officer work. Oh, but we had to also keep our credit clean. We couldn't owe back child support. We couldn't do a lot of things because we were working under a federal contract that required for us to have a clean background. That meant that you also had to have a good credit background because these companies all check your credit. I don't understand how MTC is still here in Willacy County under another contract, but they are. Anyways, your credit checks have to do with your character in a job. They check your credit to see how good you are in your character for a job. Are you going to be there on time? Are you always going to be there on time like you are when you make your payments? Because you got to have a credit score of so many points. I don't have to have a credit score of so many points. By the time I came over here, Clay West had showed me how to invest my money. And I had bought my house in Willacy County cash with my 401k. So I didn't really need these prison jobs that I took for a house to live in. My house was paid for before I started working for them. Let's get that real clear in this little picture. So they lost the case, and then a few months later, they lost the contract because they did something and the contract went under furlough. So everybody got laid off. So I had never gotten unemployment. So at that time, you could still extend your unemployment and extend it up. And I extended it to 2 years. I didn't work for 2 years between 2009, no, 2011 to 2013. In 2013, I went to the unit in the back, which was also a Willacy County detention center. That was a federal detention center. That was not for illegals. That was just for people that were waiting to go to court and then be sentenced to be sent to prison somewhere else. And I worked for them for 3 years or 3.5 years. Now, these jobs, I never missed a day, just to miss days. I didn't get sick. I was there the whole 3.5 years. Did they care? No. I would tell females that worked there with me that I didn't have nothing to do at home. So I didn't have to be missing days. I didn't used to have that many friends that were going to be inviting me to parties every weekend. So I didn't used to miss days. And the detainees that I took care of there were like between 60 and 80 females because we had like, oh, I was always stuck in a part of the unit where I took care of females. And when they would come in, I would tell them up front, this unit is going to give you 2 rolls of toilet paper and a week. And these females, no, they would get 3 rolls. The females would get 3 rolls of toilet paper a week, and the males would get 2. On Mondays, they would get 1, and on Thursdays, the men would get 1, another one, and the females would get 2 on Thursdays. I don't know why. And I think that now I realize why. Females would have visitation on Saturday and Sunday, and they would curl their hair with the toilet paper. And that's how they would make themselves pretty for their families. But I would always tell them, hey, there's people that order this stuff, and sometimes they don't order it. So sometimes we don't have from the officers. If they really needed it, they would get another roll during the week if we had it under the desk. And I quit that job because I kept getting called while my mom was in a doctor's office, and me and my 2 other sisters were there with my mom in a heart doctor's office in Harlingen, and they kept calling me for something, and they kept saying that the warden there wanted me there. And I'm like, he can wait until I go into work at 3. I was working from 3 to 11 at the time, and I told him, he can wait until I go in at 3, and I might be late because my mom is in a doctor's office. So when I walked in to the unit and into that warden's office, he hit me with, who gave this commissary paper to this detainee? Highlighted. And I looked at him and I said, I did. Commissary sells toilet paper. All of these detainees get told, buy 1 roll for an emergency. The commissary toilet paper was a different color than the paper that the prisons gave. So we knew that if it was a purchased toilet paper, it had to stay there. We couldn't be messing with their commissary things. But this lady was mad because I had already told everybody, and that was part of my job. Buy a toilet paper because emergencies happen and people don't order stuff in this unit a lot. They forget because they're doing other things. Well, when he told me that the U.S. Marshals had called him up all mad at him, I'm looking at him like, really? That's not my problem. So I told him, Warden Ibarra, you got the wrong Mexican. I don't have $100,000 in credit debt. The house that I got here, that vehicle that's outside was my Nissan. And my Nissan had gotten paid like in January. The last payment had gotten made. It's fully paid for. I don't bend my elbow every 2 weeks when I get paid. You really have the wrong Mexican in front of you if you think that I wasn't going to give a detainee a highlighted commissary paper telling her it's not my fault that I don't have any toilet paper under my desk because somebody didn't order it, and it's not my job to order the toilet paper for this unit. It's not my job to order toilet paper for this unit, Warden Ibarra. And Miss Perez, the HR person, is like, Gongora, you can't do this. I told her, yes, I can. Give me a piece of paper. And I resigned from that job, telling him I will be back in 30 minutes with your uniforms. This is Texas. Just like you can fire me for any reason, I can walk out of this job giving you a reason and telling you in 30 minutes I will be back with your uniforms. Employees don't think that they can do that, but they can. Few months later, I waited like 6 months. Then I went to work for Southwest Keys. By the way, that warden was fired because he kept detainees in that unit because he was the warden. And he kept detainees in that unit when we got a Hurricane 4 here in Willacy County. He endangered all those detainees because he didn't want to move them out of that unit. Why? Because if he moved them out, he had to hire buses to move them out. Plus, he had to hire G4 and G4 buses and officers to move them out. That was going to cut into his bonus at the end of the year. Let's get real here. Oh, I'm still talking about your act. Don't think I'm not. It has to do with the Bureau of Prisons. They had classes there and stuff. But in that prison, it wasn't going to matter if you went to class because that prison there was just for waiting to go to court so they could send you somewhere else. So don't think that I don't know about programs in the prison system put in place by political people for their interests. Because none of those people taking those classes changed their lifestyle by taking any of those classes. All they want is to reduce their sentence. Then I went to work for Southwest Keys, who is still on a big lawsuit with the labor board. These people that like to steal from these programs, we need to get real when we start telling somebody that looks dumb like me about bills that are in place and why. Especially when I worked 9.5 years in the Bureau of Prisons with MTC having 2 different contracts. When I worked for Southwest Keys, I worked for them 2.5 years. That was the program for unaccompanied illegal children here in the United States. These programs are placed there just to keep the children moving from one home to another home to another home. Children get violated and stuff, and nobody, they take people to court, but what do you do for those kids that are not going to stay here in the United States? You have these people from across the border, the coyotes, bringing those children across that river and leaving them on the edge of the river and telling them, we're going to be watching you from the other side. Don't move. On their shirts, they have a little baggie with all the information that these people need. Because other people are paying for these children to cross and to be done that way. They're not getting unaccompanied all over the United States. No, they're getting unaccompanied across the border to that little road that goes all along the Rio Grande River, where Border Patrol trucks pass every day, all the time. These people have them timed. When I worked for the prisons, they always would tell us to do things randomly so that people wouldn't know how you were doing things and you didn't create a pattern. But these Border Patrol people create a pattern. So they know exactly when that truck is going to pass by there. And that's when the children get put on the edge of the road with these little bags that have all their information about their relatives here in the United States. But that's not the end of that little kid's trip just because he has information on his chest. Then we have to pay people to investigate the relatives that are here in the United States. Where do they live? Do they have enough space to have another child in that house? Because, of course, we're all about how much space these people have. Even if they don't have any space or if they're living under a bridge with their own relatives, we got to butt in and say they need at least a 20 by 20 area per person. And they do investigate these people. Well, let me tell you one thing about all these people coming from other countries. I'm not talking about the ones coming from Mexico. The people that are coming from other countries do logistics. None of those people are coming to stay in the state of Texas. They do logistics. They already know that the state of Texas is the state in the union that pays the least amount to their employees that are working. Even though the employee workforce is the one that moves the state, they don't care. The minimum wage in Texas is the least amount paid in all of the United States. I think other states were already at $13 or $14, and Texas was still at $7.99 up until last or the beginning of this year. Angry, yes, because somebody was telling me about the ACT program, and that ACT program was just put in place because that person might end up in jail and he wants to reduce his sentence. Back to Southwest Keys. They do studies on the families, and these families, most of them are in Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, New Jersey. Why? Why are they all over there? Well, let me tell you why. We have Tyson, we have Purdue, we have the meat markets all over there with their factories. And these people go and work in these factories with their contracts. But the cost of living in these states is higher than it would be in Texas. So they get houses that have basements, first floors, and second floors, and sometimes third floors. And each family that is in that house pays for their floor. One person buys the whole house, but everybody's paying on that bill. And they all have a lower rent than somebody that would be renting the whole house just for their own family. Because somebody's renting the basement part, somebody's renting the first part, somebody's renting the second story, and somebody's renting the third story. Well, at this point, you have CPS and everybody that's doing their little studies saying there's too many people living in this house. So this kid is stuck in these programs for 2 years, moving from one spot to another spot. Oh, well, we have to find another sponsor for him. But they can't keep these children more than 6 months in one house. So these programs have a lot of houses. I think Southwest Keys has like 4 in Brownsville. They used to have one in Combs. They had one for really little children under 10 in Westlaco now. So they have a lot of houses. San Benito has 2 for the same program because they got to move these kids from one house to the other until they're 18 or until they can find them a sponsor. But Juan Sanchez was the founder of Southwest Keys, and he was made to resign the year that I stopped working for them, which was like 2018. And it might have been later. I don't remember. I'm already 60. I don't have to remember those things. But I can remember that at that time, Juan Sanchez was made to resign because he was paying himself $1.5 million, but was refusing to give employees a raise. The employees were the ones that were maintaining that program going, but he was paying himself $1.5 million at the time. What did resigning do for Juan Sanchez? His wife was already a CEO also, so she was paying herself $1 million. His children and his sisters and his family, he made sure that all of his family had the top positions in that company with the top pay. So making Juan Sanchez resign didn't cause any dent to the Sanchez family money coming in from these programs. Is the Department of Labor going to check that? No, because they don't care that this person was paying himself $1.5 million. They are only investigating the part where employees were getting fired or whatever, and they were not getting paid their vacation pay because this company was saying that it was grant money. It was grant money to not pay your employees earned vacation that they earned. We're not talking about sick leave because we know that every employee loses sick leave because that's something the company gives you. But when you don't miss days of work and your vacation is accumulating because you have supervisors telling you somebody else is already on vacation that week, you can't go on vacation, and every time you ask, you get the same answer, and your vacation keeps getting accumulated, that's BS there. And they are not wanting to pay, and they're still under investigation. This has been 2 or 3 years, or more than 3 years. But there's more time than money on these big lawsuits. It took 6 years to get MTC. So there's there's a lot of ways of people stealing from the government and still getting away with it. Because what did they do to Juan? They didn't make him go to jail because he was inappropriating funds from that company. All they did was make him resign. So when you tell Angelica Gongora that somebody put in an ACT program for the Bureau of Prisons, I'm going to tell you. He was just lining up his own little road so he could reduce his sentence if he ever got put in jail. That is my belief. I'm not being political. I'm telling you what I believe. And I'm also going to tell you, those programs don't do any good to anybody that's in the Bureau of Prisons if they're going to get out with a reduced sentence to live the same life that they were living before they went in. Unless they can show me that they're actually improving the way that that person is going to actually live when they get out, those programs are useless. You're just wasting our tax dollars. So see, I didn't go to college. I don't have degrees. I have a GED and 10 years plus working on federal government jobs to tell you that these people don't change when they're in there. They're going to class because they know that they're going to reduce their sentence. When they get out, they go back to the same lifestyle. So you didn't do nothing except waste my tax dollars. I'm not going to cuss anybody out about that because like I said, this is not a political thing. But I did go and look it up. Thank you for telling me that that's the only thing that he did. But that was only because he needed to line up some way of reducing his time if he got put in. As far as I'm concerned, he stole those electoral votes and he did not win the popular vote from the United States. Hillary did. He didn't do nothing for the south of Texas when he was in there for 4 years. Neither has Biden. As far as I'm concerned, the only one that was doing anything was Hillary when she was ignoring Clinton and Monica because she was running the country when she was there. And I might not vote this year because I really do believe that Greg Abbott should have ran for president. Then they would have been scared. You have to watch your enemies real close. And this one is in our backyard. Bye, you guys.